Hey, what's up, everybody? Rob here from Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back. So, just kind of testing out a new setup. This will be the first time I've been able to live stream the actual screen, or not. Sorry, not the screen, the paper. I'm shooting with the camera downward, but I have to make sure things are set up fine. So, audio check. The camera is actually set up in reverse, and I had to flip the video in OBS. I don't know if that's a bit technical for some people, but let me know what it looks like, what it sounds like, because again, this is a entirely new setup for me. I'm actually running a Panasonic Lumix G7, so hopefully the footage is good. But I really wanted to start shooting some video. Um, and then also, what I want to let people know is that I've been having some problems responding back to so many comments and Udemy comments, things like that. So what I want to do is start doing more live streams where I can do Q&As and answer you guys back more effectively. Because I know there's a lot of people that want to learn and improve their knowledge, and it's hard to type things back and really get as descriptive as I can in a video response. So I think really this will be a lot more effective way to help people get past stumbling blocks. Okay, yeah, thanks very much. Every third stroke, things are oriented right, and sound is coming out great. Fantastic. Okay, so we can move forward then if it's looking good to everybody. It says the stream health is good, but you know that's subject to change with with streams. So we'll just go for it while we can. So I was gonna doodle some expressions. You guys are welcome to. This is a Q&A, so you're welcome to direct the live stream and let me know what you want to learn. Lately, I've been focusing on expressions because, well, you got to always practice expressions, gesture of the body, things that help you to tell a good story. And, a lot of times expressions and body language is paramount, or it is paramount. You gotta study it often. And it's tricky. It's tricky to get that variation in your work and have all these different characters that you can use for your storytelling. Because if not, you'll just draw the same characters over and over again. Definitely see myself doing that, so I have to practice expressions quite a bit. So you let me know. That was just kind of a starting point. Uh, this is kind of how I'll doodle things like that. I'll sit there and maybe draw a couple variations in eyes and eyebrows and mouths, and I like to do piecework. But um, and then Steve Jagette, forgive me if I'm getting that wrong. Want to learn nose anatomy, and then Yaving Yinka. You know how we draw hair, different kinds of hair, and another one for hair. Okay. Oh, you guys would pick hair. That's a tough one for me as well. Folds in clothing. That's a tough one. Yep. Okay. Well, we can kind of address a couple of each. What we can say about hair and clothing. There are a lot of similarities to that. So let's start with that, I guess. We'll go from there, then we'll try to do some nose anatomy. Let me get a new sheet here. This doesn't sound horrible as I adjust this. The hair is it, you're looking for a flow and a pattern and ribbons, in a sense. So one thing with hair is that it's real easy to want to draw the hair like a boxy kind of shape, right? So you start off and you go, well, here's a shape of a head, and I'm just going to do this, kind of solid shape of hair. Okay, we'll do something like this, and in a sense that kind of gets you started, but it looks really silly, right? Really animated. You put a big old glare on the top, or maybe on the side, or whatever. But you got to mix this way of thinking with flows and ribbons. So essentially, what you want to do is think of locks of the hair, and you want to rotate it. You want to swirl it in and around itself like a ribbon. And the reason why this is like clothing is because clothing has a similar kind of energy to it. So all this stuff has an energy and a flow. And so one thing I recommend you do is you practice drawing ribbons, flipping it around itself. This also applies to smoke. A lot of things with just energy or wind or things flowing through them. Kinetic energy. I don't know how to really describe it, but and then what happens with hair is you have to think about these bulks of hair kind of interlocking and flowing together and around and through and behind. And you also want to get those little flips and curls at the bottom. So I think these are referred to as beauty lines. And it's just that little flip that you get at the end. And you're going to see that in things like hair, eyelashes, even sometimes anatomy. You're going to kind of throw that in there because it's got more of an energy to the line and I don't know if they call it a beauty line, but it's evident in hair. And the other thing that you have to do, so you're interlocking these bulk strands or clumps of hair in a sense, and you're doing it like ribbons. And the more curly the hair, the more evident this is, and the tighter the curls, these S-hook lines, the tighter these are going to get. And then also you want to bring these out occasionally, right? You want to make the hair look more interesting, and you want to add these little flips, and you might get overly stylized and really bring that curl out or something like that. And then once you get the bulk of it, I like to a lot of times work large to small. So I'll get a lot of this idea and I'm thinking about the perimeter shape, but I'm implementing this idea of energy and flow and ribbons in along with this. So it's a kind of a coupling of the two. So you can kind of go like that, it's that plus that. And then at the end, you want to bring some strands of hair kind of in front, like these wispy little flips of hair. You might throw some in the back, but you're going to draw the smaller ones. So again, work large to small. And hopefully that will help you to kind of get it, to kind of start figuring it out. I think for me, the trickiest part, let me erase back this first one. The trickiest part is kind of the part where it goes against the scalp and it comes down. So this is where I look at pictures because I don't know what it is, but I always struggle with hair designs. I'll kind of go back to the same thing over and over. So that's when I see myself doing that, I look at reference, I look at other artists, I look at photos of like beauty photos where they have the beautiful hairdos and all that. But the thing if I don't look at that, I'll go, well, there's a hairline roughly in here somewhere, right? You can start by drawing the hairline, roundabout, shape of a face. I'll just do a basic silly face there. And then I'll start drawing the hair, and I swear I like go to the same thing of like attach it to the scalp, bring it down these ribbons. And at first I draw almost the same carbon copy thing that I do because I don't know what it is. My mind just doesn't wrap around the concept very well. And then I look at pictures of it and I go, wow, my hair is so boring. It looks like a 1980s, well, I guess 80s it would be way up, right? It'd be all teased up here and there'd be like this big fan. But it looks very boring, very, very plain Jane. So what I do is I start here again. I might pull some reference. I even created a mood board with all these different photos of great hairstyles. You obviously just Google it. There's your mood board. But then I'll take that, I'll soft erase this, and I'll draw, and I'll pay attention to when I'm looking at whatever hairstyle I like, how it comes up, how it flows back, how it swirls around the head, how some parts are in front of and other parts are behind. And then again, big to small, and I'll work into that. But that's my process anyways, and I'll do that for pretty much every hairstyle I struggle with, so I don't, again, keep drawing the same one. Okay, let me read through the comments real quick. Excuse me. Oh man, that's a lot of comments. Goodness. Wasn't paying attention there. Let's see. I appreciate all the ones about inspiring to draw. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. I'm looking for questions here. One of the biggest challenges is how to maintain the same proportions of a character's head. Use your angles and box things out as much as possible. Practice rotating the box all over. Let me stay focused on this for a minute. Maybe we'll get back to that because we were talking about hair and then potentially going to nose anatomy. So I don't want to get too many different topics going here. But you're right. And I think that whenever you do struggle with proportions from different angles, you really want to go back to, you know, boxing it in and segmenting the box. It's very kind of boring, but whenever you do more of the underlying drawing and structure, you generally are going to hedge off problems like that. You're going to hedge off problems with symmetry. So whenever I lack the underdrawing, I typically will see that lack in those finish areas, I guess, in the proportion. You know, you'll see it in the structure. Oh my God, there's all kinds of crazy comments in here now. All right, so all right, still looking for. See, and then there's another one for full head drawing. Then there's one for arm muscles. Okay, well, let me see if I can explain. We talked about clothing. Let me show you the relationship that I was trying to explain with this matching clothing. So forget my really bad hair job there. But see, and then even this, like as I have this shape here, to make this work, I would just keep adjusting this until it's more dynamic. So it looks really boring, and then I would just keep sculpting it and trying to bring it out. But again, I really do lean on reference for hairstyles, because if not, I will just do the same boring one all the time. Okay, so with clothing, so clothing, a good thing to pay attention to is the pinch points, and so let's take a shoulder, for instance. Let me make sure I'm on canvas here, or on screen. So you got a shoulder, and you start off real boxy, and so you got a shoulder, you got, you know, maybe where the chest is, and then you've got these pinches that come out from there. And so you've got a couple things. You've got the areas where they pinch. They usually kind of spin outward, and then they have the reaction to the material on the top. So for instance, as this comes out, it gets wider, and then as it gets up here, it might create a little bump, and then it might straighten out. You might get another little bump. You don't see as much on top of the shoulder, but it's really finding those consistencies within that. So like here on the shoulder, you might get a little bump, and then these might come together and kind of pinch under the arm. You're typically going to get a shadow more on one side, right? That's how light source works. And you're going to kind of do this similar thing all over the body. So this is a bad example, but it's basically a pinching, and the material goes out like this. It's rounding over, so you're going to probably render it something like this to show that, you know, that it's actually rounding over. And then again, you get the effect on the other side. So let's try it like this. Comes in, shadow. You might do a little bit of shading on, you know, kind of the inner effect or whatever, this inner kind of area. Man, I'm not digging that. Hold on. Let's try a different example here. And the reason why I'm trying to say it resembles here is because of the flow. Like, so let's take a, you know, cape or something. So it's coming down like this, and it starts to billow and flow. You get this kind of loop that goes back and forth like this. So like that. So you get this pinching up here, and then you get this flow of the material, you know, rotating back and forth. So in a sense, it's kind of like hair, where it's you know, a flow that you're looking for, a pattern, this ribbon-like effect, and really it's just, you know, I guess the wind or energy flowing through it, the kinetic energy that you're seeing that makes these patterns. Somebody to look at. Let me grab one of my books. Hold on one sec. Where is it? Well, let me show you another one. It's by this gentleman right here, Bern Hogarth. So this is his one on dynamic drawing, the human body, but he's got one on clothing. I'm hoping I didn't lend it out, but it's dynamic wrinkles and drapery. So really great stuff, and he's going to explain a lot of this right here. That's where I picked up what I know about this stuff, and I need to revisit his book apparently because I feel like I'm lacking right now. But a lot of times I scribble and work through it until I figure it out. But same thing, you're going to shade this. You're going to pick your light source. You're going to render it out with the forms. You do something like that where you go around the forms. And then you might shade like this. But even though this is like more of a cape scenario, the same idea applies to shirts. It applies to, pants. The big difference is the thicker the material, the less, the thinner the material, the tighter the pinching is going to be. The tighter the material is going to get inside certain areas. So there's that to worry about. So that's the difference if you're drawing leather versus silk or something. But all of the ideas are really the same. And then the, let's see, the other thing is like the patterns that you get in the material like this. So it's like this back and forth zigzag. And this looks a bit silly at first, but it's a zigzag pattern that you get. And then again, it's like indented here, a bump here, indented here, bump here. So you see like this in like leather boots or something like that, or a lot of leather materials. And then the thicker the material is, the higher these bumps are going to be. So it's a bump here, a recess here, bump here, recess there. And you got to shade it that way to bring that out. But again, they get thinner and then they kind of pinch back and forth. And you see that repetitive pattern in a lot of folds. And then obviously you're going to shade one side of it as well, but you got to kind of get this process going, or this pattern. Yeah, something like that. Anyways, struggling to do clothing. It figures you guys would pick like the hardest things for me to draw. Let's see, Burn something. Oh, Bern Hogarth. Yeah, you need to see the title again. It's Burne, Hogarth. Required reading, in my opinion. This guy, his books were the biggest shift for me personally in my art. Like when I found out about his books, I remember watching something with Todd McFarlane. He mentioned him, or I read a book and that Todd had put out, and he mentioned this guy. I went and picked up the books like immediately, and went through them like crazy. And yeah, fantastic instructor. He gets a bit into the complex side of things, so be ready for that. But it's kind of cool because it makes you realize like there's a lot of thought that goes into this stuff. It's not just like, hey, look at this picture, let's draw it. That's one part of the equation, but the other part is like, actual science. And he's just very, you could tell by reading his books, he was an intellectual type. So, which kind of left me at a little bit of a loss. Drawing a couple noses, maybe that'll be a little bit easier since I feel like I struggled on the cloth thing there a little bit. Let's see if we can do some noses, shall we? All right, so nose anatomy. All right, let's just start with a side profile of a nose. Is that redundant? Side profile, just a profile of a nose. So a lot of times I'll think of the triangular shape of the nose like that first. And then, obviously the nostril. I know there's a bunch of fancy terminology for the nose parts, but this is kind of how I'll think about it. The bulbous part of the nose, or the tip of the nose, and the wrinkle you get for the skin off the side there, the top lip. So I'll kind of start like this, and then say, I know you guys don't want to just see that, so say we're doing like a more dramatic shot to the nose, bit of an upshot or something like that. I think it's important to kind of establish the look of the nose that you're after. So profiles are good for that. And then as you work back, again, use your basic primitive shapes to establish perspective. And so I might think about it like this first. Okay, and notice we got this little hook going back, so that needs to be evident somewhere in here. And then what's easy to do on a shot like this, as we talk about the nose, I feel like we got to talk about the surrounding area. So what happens is when you go to draw this, it's real easy to say, well, I'm going to put the brow up here. And then all of a sudden it looks really wrong because since you're going with this perspective, the brow has to be in that perspective as well. So it actually goes past the nose, and so you would draw the front plane to the forehead or something like that. So I'm just trying to explain that relates because it connects. So you gotta think dimensionally about all this. So as we get into the nose, you got is it the septum? I better not try to say the terminology, but you got the middle part of the nose comes out like that. It kind of tapers inward. You got your nostrils. You start very basic, and I almost look at it like I'm drawing Transformers or something, like very, very geometric and primitive in a sense, and get all the lines going in the right direction, or somewhat in the right direction. So I can use like a triangular shape for the nostril again, like that. And then I think what's important here is the nose. You can see how it comes out here, down here, or it angles back, comes back, and really this can be rounded. But here I've got just a straight line, so I need to get the plane change in a little bit right there as well. So I don't know if that's the right description of that plane change, but again, that's kind of how I work into it. Like I'll just throw in some of these little angles and see if that is a little bit closer to what I'm looking for. And let's see the side. This is probably the trickiest part for me to envision. So as it comes back here, it comes down something like that. And it's going to look a bit strange because we got this upshot. So I might have to play with the amount of distance that it goes back, or up, I should say, because I guessed at this perspective. And there's really no way to map that. Like, people often look at something like this and go, well, how do you map that distance? It's like, I couldn't tell you. I mean, maybe there's some algorithm for measuring this distance across this way perspectively. I don't know. But what I would say is that you just have to learn to, trust your eye and visually move things around. And that's why you start simplistically and use your angles so that or use your primitive drawing first so that you can move these lines around without losing a tremendous amount of time. So again, I'm going to look at this, go, this nose feels like it's too high up. Like it looks too elongated compared to this in a perspective shot. So I'm going to need to move all this down. But if I sat up here and I started rendering an eye and doing this detailed, majestic looking eye, then I'm not going to be as apt to make my adjustments here proportions. So we have to play with our proportions first with basic line making and hopefully get a lot of that groundwork in place, and then obviously do our pretty stuff over top. Okay, so let me soft erase this back. So that's our construction lines. Hopefully I'm on camera good for you guys. And comment too and let me know if any of this is out of focus, or because I think I can adjust my focus with the new setup I got. So this is my first time actually using a DSLR, or no, actually I think it's called a mirrorless camera. But anyways, an actual camera. Before I was using my iPhone, and that come with a whole host of problems, like somebody calling you in the middle of a video. That was lovely. All right, just sharpening my pencil. You guys want to see this part? Isn't that cool? You got to be really careful when you do this, so you snap off the lead and it makes you want to break stuff. Like you just hulk out if you break your lead, but yeah, you just kind of do this, nice and easy. And almost sharp. Takes a minute though. That's why I like my technical pencils. How to draw with no messy lines. Sorry, I'm just reading through a couple of these comments as I sharpen. I got a couple on perspective. I guess we can explain a little bit about that. Raven King, good to have you. Glad you're finally catching a live stream. I'll try to start doing these more regularly. That's why I got this set up, because I've been wanting to live stream in this way, actual drawing. So this is this should be my first time ever recording a live stream while drawing on paper. It's kind of crazy, but what happens is you need a lot more stuff to do it. It's not, I thought I had everything until I went to do it, and then I realized, no, you need a video capture thingy, little card, or it's really just like a USB stick. It's so funny because back in the day when I was doing stuff like that, well, I wasn't doing this, but I messed around with video capture cards. They were like these big devices and big cards you had to put in your PC, and now they're just like a dongle. So weird how technology has advanced so much where things become that much smaller. All right, so with the nose here, I'm just going to wrap this one up, and then I will we'll touch on perspective drawing and anatomy a little bit better. One thing I would say about the nose that it becomes tricky from an angle like this, the nose actually comes back, and there's like this little, and there's a name for this, but there's this little angle that you get right there. And obviously all noses are different. I'm just explaining the one that's similar to what I've got here. So it's getting this contour, this curve that you're going to draw here. So a lot of times I'll draw through this and I'll get this idea of the bottom of the nose, but it's not as simple. Let me show you a more simplified way that I think I would have done it before. I probably did it a lot of ways, or a lot of times. So just going like this, for instance, right? And that looks okay. I mean, it's not like it's horrible. There's a bit of a curve there, but that's really not the way the nose would be. It's got more compounding curves in there. So if you want something basic, you just do that, and you can do these lines, and say that's your biggest plane change, right? That's your most significant plane change. You could do that, and that's for a simplified approach and style. That's fine. But all I'm trying to explain to you is that there's a lot more going on to the nose. That's why it's so complex to draw, and it would be more like a bit of a slight bend here downward. It would come up. It kind of has this, I don't know what it's called, but it goes back like this. And then even the nostril is going to have a bit of a compounding curve. That looks strange, but again, it's more like that than the other way. And again, I think that's why it's so difficult to illustrate this, is because there's a little bit of stuff going on in there. Just like this ridge you get right here. And obviously this coincides with the lip. So you get that little horseshoe shape under the mouth. I won't get too far into that. But anyways, just pay attention to this area. And then as you're studying your photos and recreating them, just kind of look at this area. Look up the nose. Okay. So let's see. We want to talk about perspective now a little bit. Perspective and anatomy. Does that sound good? My God, the questions on here are so vast, and if you guys could read through them and like try to pick something that you already see that goes along with what you would also like to know, because it's like it's all across the board. So what happens is I don't know what to pick. Maybe we should do like a software or something that I could pull up on a website and plug in all these questions, and then we pick them out of a hat. Let's see. Yeah, let's do some of the perspective anatomy. Let me see if I can explain some of that. So, man, I hate to keep wasting sheets of paper here. Let me try to get more on this this page. So, perspective is always going to be a vanishing point. Okay, VP for vanishing point. It's going to come out from this is where your eye, if you were to look down at something in a scene, it's going to converge back. You got a horizon line here, and it converges back, right? So then when we try to draw something in perspective like an arm or a leg, me personally, I start off with a cylinder, like that. So that gets some of the work done right there. That helps you to think prospectively. Oh, not on the camera, sorry. So that helps you think prospectively about the mass of an arm, a leg, a forearm coming out towards camera, whatever it is. Okay? So the tricky part is making anatomy work over the top of this. Okay? And this is, again, something that you just have to keep practicing over and over again. It's not like you're going to draw. It's not like I'm going to show you right here and you're going to draw it once and go, Eureka, I got it. I mean, if that happens, that's sweet, but it just doesn't happen. It didn't happen that easy for me, and I still focus on this daily, or maybe not daily, but all the time. So, again, I'm typically going to draw something from a side view. So, say I'm trying to draw a forearm right here, okay, and even just a part, because if you say, well, I'm going to put an arm in here, shoulder, upper arm, forearm, it's not going to work like this. In fact, the upper arm would have to come back like this. And then the shoulder would attach like that. So it's not going to be all straight up and down is what I'm trying to get you to see. I'm just going to focus on this area. Okay, and the reason why this is tricky as well is because you establish this perspective and you go, okay, well, this is my wrist and here's the area where my elbow and the starting point for that perspective. So again, come over here. Make sure I'm on camera here. Hold on. I should have drew this smaller. So you start off with a basic forearm representation. Okay, whatever, and this can be however you like to draw your forearms. We all draw anatomy a bit different. It's not a big, it's not a big deal. Look at comics. There's lots of weird anatomy choices out there. But whatever your anatomy is, say it's something like this. This is how I draw forearms. Okay, there's my forearm. My elbow's back here somewhere. It's weird looking, but it's a forearm, okay? So, but what happens is I have to translate this to this. Okay, that's where it becomes tricky. Or else I can't draw foreshortening. I can't draw the body in perspective. So I just have to do the best that I can for today. And so what I do is I start with the biggest muscle that, to me, makes a forearm look like a forearm, and to me it's this one right here. The what is that? Yeah, I'm struggling today. I think it's the brachioradialis. No. Oh boy, I got my anatomy terminology right. Anyways, we'll just say this muscle here. So we're gonna grab the biggest, most predominant muscle and try to emulate this shape over here in perspective. And this is my best guess for today, right? And what I do know is it points towards the wrist. So this is like the side with the thumb, all right? So it points over here. And I do know that this one right here, I think it's the extensor digitorum. I know it's digitorum because it goes to the back of the hand that controls the digits, the fingers. So you're using these landmarks to guide you. And ourselves, put a big fist right here. Hopefully I can get this on the page. So we put a big fist right here. I know I'm drawing off the page, sorry. Okay, so again, we bring that over. We know this points towards the fist. And we see a bit of the back of the fist right there. We know the wrist has got to get really small compared to the fist. But we know it gets larger up here. So this is kind of that weird part where you just have to mess around with the organic nature of it, the curves. You connect the dots, and then you also worry about your overlaps. So everything going back is going to take a predominant overlap. Even the wrist. The wrist is going to look like it comes in front of this is that next little digitorum muscle. Back here. This comes over. Bicep's going to be back here somewhere. Tricep, up and over here, but it's going to start getting covered. And the other thing is that from an angle like this, the forearm's going to get really dominant. The hand's going to be obviously very dominant. And this stuff's going to get hidden. This is a very extreme shot, obviously. But this is kind of the thought process anyway. So this doesn't look like the greatest example, obviously, but it shows you how I think about it. That I start really here, and then I I relay that information to here. In fact, I draw on the side of the page and the back of the page this way a lot, just to kind of warm up. So hopefully that helps you. Again, it's not. I mean, you can see I've been doing this stuff a while, and I would still adjust this multiple times to get the right kind of look. I'm gonna move these lines around, but this is like my starting point, and then I adjust and maneuver from that point. So hopefully that makes sense. You guys got any questions about that? Does that help at all? When did you start drawing, and what was the first thing you needed to learn? You need to learn. I started drawing when I was 5, 6. I don't know, somewhere I was a kid. I think I've always drawn. I got serious when I was 15 and picked up my first comic. And the first thing I wanted to draw, and still to this day, is just people. Like it just, it's the hardest thing is the body and faces and storytelling. And I think I started with that, and I've been struggling to do it ever since. I do remember trying to draw the Dukes of Hazzard car when I was little, and really struggling with it. And I still struggle with cars. So it's kind of funny that's the same things as a kid are still relevant in my work today. Um, okay. And do me a favor too. Try to have your questions all in one piece, I guess, like one phrase. Because what happens is if you question one thing and then you add to that question, and I read back through it, I'm getting bits and pieces, and they're coming in too fast where I can't really go back and reference multiple phrase, multiple paragraphs there. So just try to group them all together and try to keep it as simplistic as you can. Let's see. Okay, what are all the fundamentals you need to get down before attacking character drawings? Kind of like what we're talking about here. Basic perspective is in everything. Primitive drawing, basic shapes. I'm going to always stress that because to me, it makes things a little bit easier to process. If you just jump in and start drawing anatomy, you're going to get kind of these mushy characters, okay? So I see this a lot where somebody has a good style, but they're basically their characters lack structure, so the drawings appear mushy, and they also appear when you don't structure enough, you get more variation from panel to panel, page to page. So structure and primitive geometric drawing is going to help you with that. I know not everybody likes that because I'll talk about this, and a lot of people will say, I just like jumping in and drawing the body. I don't like drawing all this stuff where I try to find the planes of the face and build up to it. And again, that's something I picked up from Bern Hogarth's books. He teaches that. They teach that in a lot of different books, that you want to structure things first, so that I'm drawing off the page again. So that you have something to house that information on, because curves by themselves can get lost into interpretation from side to side. Like I struggle with symmetry, so for me, using angles and structuring is going to help me place those curves. But if I jump into this eye right here, and an eye has a compounding curve, it goes back and forth, it flows into the tear duct, and I try to do that over here with no previous structure, especially no alignment, at least a line going through like this. At the very least, I have to do that. If I don't do that, then my curves are probably going to look a little bit off from side to side. They're probably going to look off anyways. I just struggle in that area. So finding the planes of the face, finding the plane changes of the body of anything is important, so that when you do get into character drawing, you have something to house it against. Again, it's perspective. It all ties together. So you have to, if you just jump into character design, there's so much that goes into that. So you have to get those primitive things out of the way. And for me, I don't even consider it out of the way. I still use them to this day. So yeah, so it's primitive drawing. It's primitive shapes. Like even as simple as it is, but just playing around with drawing boxes and triangular shapes, pyramids, and thinking about them in a dimensional way and perspectively, it's so boring, and people, frown upon it, but it helps you to get dimension on the page. And then you use this later on. I mean, when you start drawing characters within a scene, you're going to have to do all sorts of inventive things with these shapes to draw your architecture, to draw your storytelling. So unless you're just drawing characters, no, I'm not even going to say that. I was going to say just unless you're just drawing characters off a blank white canvas, like character designs, you'll often just see them standing there against the canvas. But even that, it doesn't matter. The body still relates well to the structure. If not, your characters won't look like they occupy space. I don't know. To me personally, that's how I see it. But yeah, for, a lot of times I'll doodle just like this, just to think perspectively, and I'll see how well I can draw lines without a ruler, just practice. Somebody's asking about the pencil type. This is a HB lead. It's a lead holder. You have to sharpen them, obviously. I go back and forth from those to technical pencils and my different eraser types like this. And then I use HB and 2H lead predominantly. And then every now and then I'll grab like a softer lead, like a 2B or something, and I'll do outlines or something. But I generally just use HB and 2H. Yeah, Trevor's got kind of a good take on that question. Did you ever take a period just to practice fundamentals, or do you always draw what you want and study fundamentals on the side? I would say for me, Trevor, it's more on the latter of the two, that I draw what I want and I study fundamentals on the side. But I sit here and just draw stuff and try to impress you, but that doesn't teach you anything. Well, it teaches you some things, but it doesn't teach you the fundamentals, which we all need to know. So I've went back and studied them more so that I can teach them better. But ultimately, it's led me to realize that I have a lot of holes in my game that I need to fix, and that's what fundamentals are all about. Like you realize that, oh wow, I wasn't looking at, like drawing anatomy. I've drawn anatomy for so long without knowing all the muscle names, and I'm like, really, you can tell I don't know them now as I was trying to recite some of them, but I'm doing a better job because I'm studying. I'm looking through my anatomy books. Actually, I'll share another book with you guys. Hold on one second. Actually, two. This is like book day on the live stream. But I just wanted to see where I'm getting my, what I use for my resources. So it's not just the doing. The doing is important, but, you got to look at different references. And this is a good one by Roberto Asti. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And Basic Human Anatomy, fantastic book. I've been going through this and learning more about terminology. And I love the breakdown of everything. The illustrations are fantastic. So there's one for you. And then another one by the amazing Da Vinci. I mean, obviously we all know who that is. And I just love, just the feeling. I got to read this book, but I think I just got it. But I've been doing more just looking at the pictures because there's such a, there's history there, right? And just looking at what he did so many years ago is just so impressive, so motivational. But so those are a couple of the books I'm going through now. Like I said, all the ones by Bern Hogarth, I totally recommend. Yeah, you got to consume as much content as you can, and don't be afraid to draw exactly what you see from those guys. Like look at their stuff and recreate it. Don't feel like that's cheating. It's great studying. When you study from masters, when you study from artists that are more advanced than yourself, it's so empowering. And, so never frown upon that. Don't start thinking, oh, I'm copying, I'm tracing or something like that. No, just learn, take it all in, and then recreate in your own style. And ultimately, you'll develop yourself that way, and you won't need to look at that stuff as much. But, yeah, that's all required learning, in my opinion. Somebody said, I have that book. Cool. Okay, now right here, I just want to, so I'm trying to read as many as I can, but then somebody's like, why didn't you answer my questions? Listen, I don't know if you can see all the people that are commenting, but it's hard for me to read all these and answer everybody back. And I just got a post like that where somebody's like, you took so long to answer me back. I got some of your courses. I just want to let people know that I've got a lot of different students online now. I've got a lot of subscribers on YouTube. And so it's hard for me to respond as quickly as I need to. I want to try to get better at that. But I just want to let people know it does get a little bit tough. Even like with the live stream, all the comments, I can't read everyone to answer everybody back. I'm going to probably end up having to get I don't know what they call it, a TA, teacher's assistant online or something like that to help out. So I just want to let people know that I'm doing what I can, but it's hard. And then you mix that in with drawing, and then it becomes even a little bit more difficult to respond. So all right, so back to this. What would you guys like to see next? I want to try to keep this going, but as long as possible. But I want to keep it moving forward. So what would you like me to draw now? Let's see. How to simplify the face. Yeah, we could do that. I kind of started this wanting to do a little bit with expressions anyway, so maybe I can kind of practice that and talk about simplifying the face. Okay, so let me start with this one's nice because it eliminates me having to sharpen. Okay, so with the face, I'll do it on a slight angle. And so you want to start with, circle for the head. So this is the Andrew Loomis method. Really recommend his books as well, especially his one on drawing heads. So you start with the sphere, a circle, slice off the side. A lot of people will ask, where do I place this? Unfortunately, I don't have an exact science to this. Maybe I have to look back at his book. Maybe it explains it better. I generally just take off about 7/8 from the height, and then I practice different ovals to see where I'm going to place this. I'm thinking, even though I'm trying to draw this somewhat spherically, I'm thinking about the plane of the front of the face. So if you have to, you can draw a rectangle here and a rectangle here. So it's a cube shape or a box-like shape, a prism. And so that's what I'm thinking of, even though I'm drawing a circle here, an oval here. Okay, and then you divide this to get the alignment of the brow. The ear is going to sit back here in this quadrant, something like that. You're going to define the center line of the face. And then you're going to, there's another division here. I just mapped this out visually because if you go, okay, from here to here, half of that, add one of these. Not everybody's jaw is that way. And, some people have a more defined jaw. Some people it's a lot smaller. Some people it curves higher. You just have to, you have to take all of this and you have to maneuver it. So what I'm going to do is just box it in. Okay, so I'm going to say maybe the jaw goes something like this, and this is going to be subject to change, but I just want to get this boxy representation going like that. Okay, the main thing is that you got the brow line, not the eyes, the brow line, the bottom of the ear will give you the nose, and then you see this is a lot of space here. You want to think about this in terms of 1/3, so I can already tell if this is too much, unless this is an open mouth pose, because we have to remember the jaw pivots here and this drops down. It's also going to go back a little bit like that. But so what we're going to do is get this space here. We're going to go up that equal space. That gives us our hairline roundabout. An equal space down will give us a closed mouth pose or slightly open or whatever. But there needs to be the 1/3 of the face. And I obviously have videos on that. Actually, my best video on YouTube is talking about defining the the 1/3 like that. So that's cool. Check it out. Anyways, so there's our basic representation of the head, like that. Ear somewhere back there. Okay, and am I out of lead? No, come on. Oh, there it is. Thought it was out of lead. Houston, we have a problem. Okay, next, something like that. You get a V right here. Okay, so there's the head. Now, as far as, I think the question was simplifying the face. So, back to the primitive shapes. I like to map things out. I tend to get better faces if I add more structure. Not always. Some days I'm just feeling a little bit more in the zone and I can draw a little bit more freely. But I often get better faces if I structure more. So this is the underlying structure of the head. The nose is going to be a bit of like pyramid or triangular shape, and kind of just, you know, draw something just to kind of establish that. I'll usually do something like this to get that up tilt to the nose, and then I'll draw like a circle for the front of the nose, bulbous part, whatever. And then, you know, come back this way, find the nostril. So very, very triangular, very pyramid-like, okay? And then as far as this area of the mouth, or, you know, this area for the mouth and the chin, you divide this into thirds. So 1, 2, and 3. But really even this, I kind of just map it out based on the, actually I did that wrong, didn't I? I guess this will still work. So the top lip goes on that top line, bottom lip, chin dimple on that lower line. So, but the main thing here is that the mouth is closer to the nose than it is to the bottom of the chin. As we round out and sculpt the chin, we're going to maneuver this line. It's going to probably come up more. So I'm constantly nudging these lines back and forth. Again, this is the brow. And let's give this so they just don't look like a robot. Let's give them a little bit of an expression. So let's do, so obviously the brows are going to adjust with expression. One technique that I've been doing more of is drawing these big circles. Just helps you to think a little bit more spherically about the eye sockets. But then what I want to do is make this eye wider. That's actually a little bit high up, isn't it? Yeah. Because remember, that top line is where the brow is. And also, a good rule for this, or a good tip for this, is the width of the eye will go from here, so this tear duct area, to the nostril. So you can kind of map across like this. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm going to bring this eye down just a little bit more. But more of a wide open eye. And then on this side, I'm going to have the eye squinted. So more closed. So on this side, the eyebrow up. And on this side, the eyebrow down. So that kind of smart aleck look, you know. And then with that, I'm going to, oh, that's kind of a weird placement of the iris. Boy. Anyways, I have them looking back. That looks strange right there. So I'm going to adjust that, obviously. And then you can also go with the nose and the mouth. Like you could raise one lip and do the, you know, the wrinkle above the nose to kind of reinforce that look. Yeah, that looks a bit strange. I'll work on that. But just like that, I would get some of the idea of this character in place. Start drawing the hairline. Work on the, you got the zygomatic bone that goes back here towards the cheeks, or the ear, sorry. So you get kind of that shape going, even though I'm not going to draw it this detailed, but thinking about some of that anatomy as I do this. All right, so let me soft erase this back. Try to clean that up. All right, just reading through this as I do this. Okay, so now, erase back all this messiness. You know what, I'm gonna try to zoom in on this. Hopefully this doesn't mess anything up. Oh. All right, this is the tricky part, because when I go to zoom in, my, there we go. As I go to focus, I should say. Let's see if that looks focused. All right, let's try that. Hold on, it should recalibrate. Recalibrate. Come on. You can do it. All right, there you go. Hopefully that's better. You guys see that better? It's kind of weird live streaming like this. That eraser is about done. Yeah, I'm telling you, I know. I try to milk those kneaded erasers. Okay, so now as I got my structure here, my rough lines, let me push this back a little bit more. Oh, got a hair on there. That's yucky. Okay, so something like that. And then now I can get in here and start to draw a little bit more organically, I guess. Say, you know, who is this character? Well, I should already be thinking about what this character looks like, obviously, but that's the part I left out. You should always be thinking about the character before you get started. Like, who is this person? What I find myself doing too is if I don't know who the character is specifically, but I'm just wanting to practice, I'll just make up. I'll say it's like a certain character, but I won't leave it at that character. I'll deviate from that, but I'll start in my mind. I'll say, well, this is like a Superman or a Batman type, you know, Bruce Wayne, whoever, and that at least gives me an idea for storytelling. Because I feel like if I don't think about that and I just draw whoever, whatever, you know, I won't know where I'll end up. And I'm also not testing myself to be a good comic illustrator, even though I don't illustrate a whole lot of books at this point, but still good to think about this stuff. So challenge yourself to have a narrative, basically. So now I'll just get in here and pick some of these lines. And I think the original question was how to simplify the face, and that's really at this part what you would do. So you get all that structure in, you get all your basic shapes, and then as you get to this part, you try to draw this stuff with the least amount of lines, but also the most important lines that you know have to be there. So for instance, it's not as simple as, I'm going to draw the face with like 5 lines, and since it's simple, it's going to read really well. What I mean is they have to be the right lines. So for instance, if I go to draw the eye, there's certain consistencies, and you can look at other styles and notice this. Like one consistency is the top eyelid is always a bit heavier than the bottom for comics. And I think just in general, it's kind of the way our eyes look for the most part, even though, you know, we don't see people in lines. But when you're recreating this stuff into a line art, there's certain things that hold true, like the iris being dark. You got to get certain things in there, and then it'll read well. Shadows on the inside sides of the eyes, because it makes the eye look more rounded. And then as soon as you got enough of that where it reads, move on to the next thing. So if you're trying to simplify, you just want to draw the most important things first, I think, and not overly render. You know, save that for the very end because you might not need it. In fact, there's a lot of styles out there that the rendering is really light, but it's very effective. And I'll always reference, like, I always think Disney when I say that, because obviously they have their very detailed stuff and, you know, amazing 3D and all that, but some of it's just very simplistic, but very energetic and effective. I mean, it's Disney, right? They know what they're doing. So, I mean, they pretty much invented storytelling. Well, they invented storyboards. I don't know if they invented storytelling. They did invent storyboards, though. But yeah, so just things like that, like, you know, drawing the eyebrow here with just a big kind of clump. You know, that's pretty popular in comics, right? Why draw every little hair when you just clump it all together? And a little. So yeah, try to think simplistically. Try to draw with shadows. That's another way to kind of think about it. Instead of drawing with lines at this part, just draw with shadows. Get like a shadow under the neck here. That obviously pushes the chin out. All right, this is a little messy because I'm using sketch paper, so you get that messy kind of line. And then, you know, all right, so this would be the line art stage. I get all the lines in place. You know, they might start bringing out the expression more. A little wrinkle up here since he's kind of raising one eyebrow. And then I might get in here and start to detail it further. I might bring out some of the rendering, plane change under the nose, shadow under the nose, things like that, shadow under the cheekbone. But notice how, like, even with the zygomatic bone, I just like saying that, it sounds fancy, zygomatic bone, that I drew that, but then I didn't further illustrate that. Like, I can erase this back now. So that's where the structure is important. You put it in there, but then it just helps you place everything, and then you don't necessarily need it to the end result. Now, if I wanted to age this character, I would draw in more wrinkles, more shadows, more rendering, and I could make this character look older. I'll probably shade down all this area. So yeah. All right, let me read through the questions here, see if you guys got anything going. All right, let's see. This character looks really smug. Cool. Yeah, and I've been trying to practice different characters and their expressions. And another good practice activity, we need to do this for a video here, is to draw. I need to do this real soon. I've been talking about it. I need to do one where I draw one character and then I have them transition through all the different expressions. I think that's a good exercise for anybody doing their own comic, is that, again, you kind of do that regardless, so that when you jump into doing a book, it works out a lot better. Your storytelling is a lot better. Yep. Hi, Felix. Good to have you. Doodle Sasquatch superhero similar to Marvel. Yeah, I don't know that I could do a good Sasquatch. I need to pull some reference on that one. Let's see. All right, Raven King, looks like they've asked this a couple times. Let me check this out real quick. When you render and try to show bounce light, how do you keep it from looking like your primary rendering, which is dependent upon light source and form of object? Mine always look the same. Okay, bounce light versus your main light. Okay, so I don't know if I can show it on this character. No, I better not. Faces are tricky. I go with pretty basic lighting on faces. In fact, if I was to bounce light the face, I would actually do it in the color, just the way I do it, because I don't know, I always shade faces and they look weird. But let's find. Let me show an example of what I think they're asking. Get this head out of here. Okay, so for lighting scenarios, I hate to get all basic, but this is pretty much how I look at it. So for bounce light, it's going to react. Let's just draw a little diagram here, like this. Oh, is that crooked? It's really crooked, isn't it? Hold on, folks. I'll get this set up better. This is my first time ever live streaming. Okay, so bounce light is going to be like, boom, boom. Okay, so you can literally draw these lines, and you can think about light in a perspective type way. So you can put like a vanishing point, and you can say, oh, your main light source is like this. But better yet, because actually whenever I do this, it feels like the light is behind this sphere or whatever it is, right? A better way to do this is a dimensional representation of an arrow. So let's say this. Let's say that the main light source is hitting this area here. So what I mean by a dimensional representation of the arrow is something like this. Try to think more dimensionally about where the light source is. That's actually not even the right direction. But this is what I'm saying. It's on this side of the object. Like I said, if I put a dot back here, it feels like it's on the opposite side of the sphere. So here's our one light source. There's another light source over here. And what it's happening is it's radiating light down. It's bouncing off a surface. Remember that almost all surfaces are reflective, even a little bit. Some are very reflective. Skin is actually pretty reflective, and that's why you get things like bounce light on skin, because it catches light from different things. And so you're going to have a stronger light. We'll say it's this area right here. This is our predominant light source. And then we're going to have a bounce light. What happens is the predominant one is going to push more shadow. And obviously, if it's not extremely specular, you're not going to end up with this hot spot. So you got to think in terms of, are you shading cloth or are you shading a car? They're very different in the way that the light reacts off the specularity and also the way they transmit the bounce light. But the main thing is that the bounce light is just going to be less dominant. So you're going to shade more through like the middle of this. And if we're talking about line art, then if it's specular, you're going to get a hot spot, a noticeable hot spot. And you're going to get things like swirls in the shadows or something like that, like you see with chrome. If it's fabric, you're going to get a dispersed and a transition, and you're going to do more of your like cross hatching and blending, because it's not specular. It's not going to have that rigid transition of light and dark. And likewise with the bounce light is going to have a fade down here, because again, it's bounce light. It's being dispersed through the transition. And if you got a harsh, more significant light source up here, that takes dominance. So I know this isn't probably the best way for you to grasp it. Hopefully it's making sense to you, but that's essentially how you have to think about it. So when you get in here and start shading, even if your shading is really ugly like mine is right now, you get an idea going. So it's not so much, if you're shading an arm, you got to think about it a bit spherically. If you're shading a box, then it's real easy, right? You've got a significant plane change from one side to the next with the box. But that's also why you have to kind of mix them together, because slightly different values, then they blend them together. And it becomes a lot more effective because they're not guessing so much. They're breaking it down. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's how I would think about dispersed light or bounce light. And again, if it's more specular, you're going to get a more significant hot spot and more defined transitions of light to dark. If it's a fabric or something not so specular, you're gonna do more of your cross hatching and blending in a sense. Okay, so on to the next one. All right, just trying to read through a couple of these real quick. Okay, here, MedJ, because I see you're saying your question's not going to get answered. Type your question again real quick. Let me see if I can see what you're talking about. See if it, a lot of times too, you got to remember I'm trying to have these coincide with kind of what I want to draw, but when we're explaining or something like that. So, what's your question? Get a new sheet of paper here. Make sure there's something on the screen so I know where we're at. And sip my coffee as I'm trying to read through these really fast. Going straight to ink, yeah, that's a tough one. I don't do much of that. And about digital versus traditional. I do both. I love drawing in the app Procreate. I'm working on a Spidey piece. I just shared a video on that. Yeah, so one of the things that one of the things that I noticed too is like when I did that last video, people were talking about, I said Procreate's really great for digital inking, and I think there was a bit of negative recourse on that or whatever, like that I was somehow downing Clip Studio Paint. Keep in mind, I use Clip Studio Paint daily as well, and that's one of my go-to programs. I just actually like the drawing and inking specifically in the app Procreate. Um, but to create a full book, I still go with Clip Studio Paint. My Blackstone comic, as slow as it's coming out, is still being done entirely inside of Clip Studio Paint because it has more features for creating a full comic. So I just wanted to kind of voice that real quick while we're here. Why do people say concept art like lands? Why do people say concept art like landscapes? Highly detailed characters can't be drawn in Clip Studio Paint, but in Photoshop. I don't get that question, but no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, Clip Studio Paint is, to me, Clip Studio Paint's more effective at highly detailed landscapes and painting. I've done all my best painting has come out of Clip Studio Paint. You have better perspective tools. It blends paint better, in my opinion. More people, if you look at paintings and you see, more. Let me zoom this back out real quick. And you say, well, I see a lot more high quality paintings coming out of Photoshop. The reason that is because Photoshop's been around so long and they have a huge market share of people. Not as many people know about Clip Studio Paint or have taken the plunge to get it because Photoshop is like an industry standard. So that's really why you see the best paintings coming out of there. It's not that Photoshop is so much more effective at painting, it's that there's so much more reference out there for somebody that wants to learn how to paint. You can look up tutorials, you can look up tons and tons of brushes and resources because so many people are using it because again, it's an industry standard. A lot of people that came up when they started asking questions in school, what are the schools pointing them towards? Photoshop, because Adobe, kind of runs the show on that. So that's what that boils down to. Like Clip Studio Paint has more tools, in my opinion. I mean, it just does. It's not even my opinion. It just does. Like to this day, Photoshop doesn't have great perspective tools. I don't even think it has perspective tools. Photoshop doesn't have where you can grab a model and pose them. So I love Photoshop for design and things like that, but the Clip Studio Paint is definitely more effective for artists, especially comic artists. There's no doubt in my mind. So yeah, I was reading somebody wanted to see a quick body pose and how I would do that. I'm kind of jumping the gun. I would normally establish the heads tall, but what I like to do is just draw the head and then roughly 4 heads down is the bottom of the pelvis. Okay. So I've got videos on the channel here for proportions. Roughly where the waist is the elbows. So you can kind of work down if you need to. And then forward bend for the top leg, femur, and then circle for the knee, back bend for the leg. The legs are generally the height of the body from this point down, from the hip to the ankle is roughly the leg. The upper leg is a little longer, but obviously, this all varies based on character types. Generally, if you want a male character to look more imposing, you're going to go with the bigger torso and a little bit stumpier legs. Just think like, if you're trying to make the Hulk, he's got these little legs and this big upper body. So that works even with your basic characters. You're just going to thin out the proportions. But typically in comics, you give the characters longer legs. So it's kind of a, what style do you like? What are you trying to make your character look like? I always struggle with this leg right here because it's like a forward bend that you want to kind of see, but it can't be too evident because this leg is kind of pointing towards camera or towards the viewer. So yeah, I'm going to extend these legs a little bit more. What's funny too is I noticed that if you really want to spot the flaws in your work, take a picture of it and look at it smaller on your phone. I don't know why that is. I mean, I know that anything you can do to look at the work differently helps you spot flaws, like flipping it in a mirror and things like that. But man, I'll take a picture and look at it on my phone and go, wow, that's really bad. I needed to I need to redo that. But I also do it where I'm looking at the opposite screen. So if I see it smaller on that other screen, it's because I've got another screen actually projecting what we're doing today. That way I don't draw off the page. So I say then crotch, the lower portion of the pelvis. How about that? So then you just kind of attach the hand there. Bada bing, bada boom. Forget about it. Sorry. Start saying things like that when I start grasping for things to say. And the stance is really weird, I know, but I just kind of throw the legs in there. I typically struggle with the stance a lot. Like I definitely see it here. These legs are really weird. So yeah, let's get those out of there. Let's just get those out of there. But I will redraw poses over and over. If it's not right, draw it again and again and again. Because everything's going to be housed against this pose. So if this isn't right, then I probably shouldn't move forward or I'm going to end up with a bad drawing. Let's try this again. And it's funny too, like the hardest thing is just a person just standing there. Like I feel like action poses are a lot easier. For one, people are a little bit more forgiving when an action pose is a bit strange. I think because they're looking at the dynamics of it. Oh, it's a tough pose. We'll forgive them. But when it's somebody just standing there, and we're so used to seeing people just standing there, so it's like it's very noticeable when it's not right. I think it's harder to draw, in my opinion. Is that a little better? It's kind of weird too, isn't it? What are the comments saying? It's okay, buddy. Just trying to help when I can if Rob misses it. Oh, what did I miss? Oh, God. Was it bad? Now I'm scared. I'm scared to read through the comments. Hey, Marzullo, can you draw girls? Nice. I like to think so. But yeah. There's another one. Can you draw girls, please? I like your little icon there with the red-headed character. That's pretty funny. Yeah, Raven King. Action poses are justifiable as the way why things are out of proportion, but static poses have to be spot on. Yeah, and it's about the gesture of it. There should be like a slight bend in the back. Like this character looks a little too straight up and down, so you have to get like this feeling that there's an arch to the back, but you're drawing just a forward standing shot. So yeah, the subtleties are harder on something like this. I think subtleties are harder in general. Like that's why drawing things overly dynamic and overly expressive is so much fun or so much more gratifying. I don't know. It's just because you can really just kind of go crazy with it. And when it's overly stylized, they're enjoying the style. But if you're going for it's actually one of the reasons why I don't like realism. I mean, I would love to be better at realism, but it's harder to me. It's harder to do that because I can't rely on my style if I'm trying to draw realistically. And yeah, realism is like work to me almost. But I do it because it's important. You learn so much from studying life, and then but I like to immediately. I feel like that's like the homework part, and then I go right to drawing stylistically and doing something a bit more wild and in essence fun for me to do. But yeah, this is how I do a basic stance, and Obviously, I would redraw it a couple times. I really should be working on the better paper. This is the paper I use to just rough sketch. It's a 400 series, I believe, which is great for ideas, and it's a bigger page, so I get a lot of ideas on a page. But then when I want clarity and refinement, I use my Bristol board. Yeah, and I want to show you guys this stuff. This is another paper that I picked up. I mentioned it in another video, I think. This stuff is actually really good, and it's one of the cheaper ones I found, but it's a nice smooth surface, and it's got the lines on there as well for comic art. So yeah, I was happy to find that. I remember seeing it in the store, and I thought, yeah, I don't know. I thought based on the series, like, oh, 200 series, yeah, I don't want that. I'm gonna go with the 3 or the 400 series because I'm a baller. And no, it's the 200 series is better. So bigger number isn't always better, folks. Yeah, I'm a bit of a consumer. I just like I go for the flashy lights and the sparkly things, and yeah, they totally get me with the hype. But yeah, so check that stuff out if you want. I remember Jimmy Ray's had it in one of his videos, so I decided to take the leap on it, and it actually, yeah, it's some really good stuff. Me likey, Robbie likey. All right, and I don't know who this dude is. Should we do a character? Let's just put a line down his face. Call him Yin Yang Man. Do one side dark, one side light. Easy peasy. Oh, wait, that'd be Domino, wouldn't it? All right, let's see if there's any more good questions. I think I'm going to be wrapping up here pretty soon, folks. But all right, but I did want to cover this. So basically, I'm thinking about doing these more frequently now. Hopefully you like this format where we're drawing on paper, we're talking it out, you know, a little bit of back and forth. And so I'm thinking about doing these Q&As more, and I want to just kind of reach out to the people that are taking my Udemy courses and my Skillshare stuff and supporting me on Gumroad, and let you know that basically I think it'll be better if we do more live streams where I do your questions on here, answer your questions on here. I think it will help me to answer more people back, because I just have a lot of people on those platforms now. So let me know if you follow the content there and you think that's a good idea. We could probably do a live stream a month and work on that. Okay, so we got a thumbs up for the Raven King. Yeah, I'm sorry, Young X2. I see your crying faces there, or whatever those are. Draw girls. We'll draw girls next time. Yeah, and then DJ May wants to see a female face. Yeah, so we'll do this. The next one, it's going to be very soon, because I'm telling you, I really like this new setup. This was actually more me coming out and trying to say, or not me coming out, goodness, sorry. Just trying to show the new setup and saying, look, you know, this is what I got. Hopefully you guys like it. Hopefully the format's good. The way the camera's set up now, I got all this free space. I had the camera like encroaching on my drawing surface, and I was worried about elbowing it and hitting it. So now that I know that this works, we should be good to go. We can do more of this. And so yeah, it was just basically me getting this set up and having this ready to roll. But we also got lucky today. The stream health has been good, which that could go sideways on one of them. We don't know. So any last minute questions here? I have a question. I've seen two ways that people draw hair. One way is dividing the hair on the cranium into front, middle, back, and side. Yeah, so like as I talked about earlier in this live stream, I think working big to small really helps with hair, thinking about flowing ribbons and not just drawing strands. Don't try to draw individual strands of hair. It's like bulks of hair. And then, you know, even people with very thin hair, there's the flow of the hair in a bulk, not drawing hair after hair after hair. It just comes out looking like spaghetti if you do that. Yeah, and really you got to think about the way the hair reacts off the like somebody said, off the shoulders. You know, you got to think about it bouncing off the shoulders, flowing around it. You got to think about the wind flowing through hair. If they got thin hair, if their hair is more thick, you're going to think more rigid and more, or not rigid, that's the wrong word, but just more shape oriented. Like, and you know, always practice your silhouettes. You know, you want to look at silhouettes of everything individually and break those down. It'll help you to, you know, recreate it in your own style. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up here, folks. We hit an hour and a half, so hopefully this content was good for you. I really enjoyed doing this. I really like the new setup, so you're going to be seeing more of this very, very soon. If you basically comment after this video goes live, let me know what you thought about it, what you think could be improved, what you want to see covered in future topics. I unfortunately couldn't read through all the different comments. I guess that's a good problem to have, but I feel bad if you commented something and I didn't specifically see it or respond to it, so forgive me for that. But yeah, so let me know in the comment section below of this video what we can do in the future, and we'll get on that. So I thank you very much for tuning in. Remember that you can check out my website at ramstudiocomics.com. Support me on Gumroad or YouTube or Udemy or whatever. It all helps. I appreciate that. So thanks very much for tuning in. More on the way very soon. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.